This episode is brought to you by Active Digital, where we help customer-obsessed companies become destination brands.
And worse yet, people don't actually say that, right? Like they pat you on the head and say, of course we care about our customer. Everything is about our customer. What are you kidding me? But then the behavior doesn't support it.
All that and more coming up as we talk to Joseph Michelli about his book, Driven to Delight, and the CX transformation at Mercedes-Benz USA that it chronicles. Do you want to decommoditize your products and services? Do you want to become a destination brand, increase your revenue, and have more control over your pricing? You're in the right place. Each week, we'll talk about how to create great customer experiences and how to orient your company to enable them. We're your hosts, Devin and David, and this is the Experience Leader Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, bringing back an amazing author, amazing customer experience professional, Joseph Michelli. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. You just hadn't tortured David yet with me, so you decided to make sure that there was equal opportunity.
That one to the list.
Oh man, yeah. I don't think David will regard it as torture at all. We're fans of your work. Obviously, you've been on the show before. I still reread through the New Gold Standard. Just because it's such a huge influence on me. So I'm really excited to get to talk today about another book of yours, which you recommended to me last time, and I dove in, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Driven to Delight. I'm pretty excited about getting to find out some of the impetus kind of leading up to the book. Can you kind of tell the story of how that book came about?
Yeah, I consulted in the automobile industry before, and someone that I had worked with, I think it was at Audi, was starting to work with Mercedes-Benz as a consulting firm, and they said, Joseph, the CEO of Mercedes would like for you to bring some of your colleagues from other companies you've worked with, because they want to have a CEO roundtable with his senior leaders to talk about how can we benchmark outside of the automobile industry to raise the bar on customer experience. So I got some of the senior leaders from Ritz-Carlton, some of the senior leaders from Zappos, and we met with the CEO and we planned this roundtable that I was going to facilitate. And that led it off. I mean, we had that lovely discussion. Steve Cannon, who was the CEO at the time, pulled me aside afterwards and said, Joseph, we really would like you to be involved in this transition beyond just helping us with the benchmarking today. And, if along the way you see a story worthy of telling, maybe we can talk about how we could capture and chronicle it in real time. So unlike a lot of other books where I'm like extracting 5 key leadership principles, this was more of a chronological discussion of year one, right? We need to create the cultural foundation and get people on board. Year 2, we need to get the design elements in place. We need to be able to deliver with journey maps and journey wheels and some things that we did for them. And it really is a wonderful opportunity to see a brand that, for all practical intents and purposes, rocks the world with product, but didn't rock the world with customer service or customer experience. And so you get to see this company that had great design engineers at the product level who hadn't designed an experience to save their lives. And then how do you sell that design to a whole bunch of independent business owners who have a franchise agreement, if you will, a dealer agreement to play and participate in the sandbox with you. So enough of that. But yeah, that's how it all came about.
No, that is so interesting. One of the things that I love is that you were able to chronicle that whole process and to really give a deep dive on what that was like. Just for a guy who doesn't have nearly as much time in the industry as you, to see something and to detail something done at that scale is really great. I love how you get into the cultural aspect of the foundation that has to get laid before you go on an endeavor this large, right? And I've got all kinds of questions about what it was like to deal with something kind of that huge. But before I jump into that, I'd love to kind of know, what was your role in the big transformation? One thing that I note in the book is that you don't make it about yourself. You made it about your client and them kind of being the hero of the story. But, me having spoken to you and read your work so much, I'm like, all right, I know that Joseph was all in the middle of this thing. How did that look?
Well, let's give credit to all the other people who are involved. I mean, these kinds of tasks at organizations this size are not done by one consultative group. So, there was a Go Experience group that really helped us develop some immersive cultural things. And I worked with them very closely on how are we going to take employees of these dealers and help them get enculturated on what is it going to take to deliver the experience we want. So blessings to Go Experience. They were just fabulous. And they're literally the kind of people in this industry who say, all right, what if we really try to get these concepts to come to life by putting people in a race car, a Mercedes-Benz AMG car, strap on the helmet, put them on a bank track. Wouldn't that be a great experience to kind of help them appreciate the quality of this vehicle? So, I mean, there are amazing people that I work with there. Lior Arussi, who was then at Strativity. He later sold the company. He's got his own new venture. He and I are going to be doing some things together there. He is brilliant and did so much of the early training. So I want to make sure that whatever I say I contributed to is just a tip of an iceberg of a lot of really super people. My job really primarily was to help develop a leadership training academy. So I was involved in that. I was involved in developing the immersive experiences. And I worked with senior leaders on looking at how customer experience was going to be part of their legacy. And I worked closely with Harry Heinekamp, who was in charge of spearheading all of the activities. Just to show you the evolution, now Harry is over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He's responsible for fan experience, largely the guy who makes sure that people have a great experience at the Atlanta Falcons football game and at their professional soccer teams games. And Steve Cannon has subsequently moved on to be in charge of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the Arthur Blanc Business Enterprises, which include the PGA Superstore. So the world is this rich abundance of connectivity, right? Colleagues, and then people you work with who may transition from one business to another who bring with them, the interest of using you as a consultant because you worked for them at Mercedes, you get to work for them in some other setting as well.
That is so cool. I hope at some point I get to run into those guys because I live in Atlanta. I've lived here for 4 years and still have not managed to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is terrible. I know.
We need to make that happen.
Yes, we do. But
I'll come down again and we'll do that. Yeah.
But yeah, that is really awesome to hear. I love a lot of the things that you had to say about what was important to instill in leadership, and not just leadership at Mercedes-Benz, but also with the dealers. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to work with Mercedes-Benz senior leadership, and what were some of the things that were easy? What were some of the challenges that you all had to figure out together as you were trying to spread this culture of customer experience throughout Mercedes-Benz USA?
Well, the easy part was because we had a CEO who was all in, right? So Steve Cannon was a marketing guy, which is, that's not the typical path to CEOs, right? Often they come from operators or other parts of the business. But as an operator, he was, as a marketing guy, he really understood the importance of people's perceptions and how perceptions shape their reality. And, you're trying to sell the dream at the sale, and then you have to deliver the dream throughout the experience. So that was super easy. And having a CEO, most of the companies that I work with, CEOs are not into the degree that the chief marketing officer might be or the chief experience officer might be. So that was huge. The downside is we're working with a brand that has two very big constituencies. You have Daimler in Germany, and you have the dealer body in the United States, both of which have vested interest in the degree to which they're going to support an enterprise of a CEO in the United States. And so some of the time you were selling Daimler on things we needed to do to help the dealers get on board. Some of the time you were dealing with the dealer advisory group and trying to sell them on, if we can get Daimler to come on board, will you come on board with us on these things? And so it's an interesting a bit of politics, and I'll keep it really tangible. So the whole business of automobile industry is one where dealers get a fixed margin on their vehicles, and there's normally a variable margin depending upon how they perform as a dealership. So every car, you get a certain margin for every vehicle, but you might get a little more variable margin depending upon whether or not you have the right, the most up-to-date building, you have certain training programs in place, you're adopting certain technologies. And so customer experience metric was one of those things that was variable, but it was small variable. And so, and if you didn't make that, if you didn't perform there, then Mercedes got to keep it. So if you get, let's for the sake of keeping it simple, you get $5 if you hit the number, right, for every car. And if you don't hit the number, we get to keep the $5, right, at Mercedes. And that's the way it worked. Not much margin was on the customer experience. And if you didn't make it, it was breakage for you, and we kept it. So to really deal with this, we had to go to Daimler and say, hey, what if we could negotiate with the dealer body to give up more of their fixed margin, the thing that they know they're going to get, and in trade for them giving that up, we're going to assure them that we're not going to keep any of the breakage on failure to perform, but instead we're going to let that money recycle based on performance, so that the ones who are the leaders in customer experience will get to benefit from the laggards. That kind of negotiation was really complicated, and it meant Steve Cannon going to Germany and really making the case. It meant really going to the dealer body and saying, we understand, we're asking you to give up money, but we're also letting you know that if the best of the breed are going to be able to get all of the revenues that otherwise would have been Mercedes. And those negotiations worked out, but those are the hard parts of making this right. Because if you don't have the incentives right, all the best intentions about making the experience better, they just don't work out. This is, in the end of the day, people want to treat people well, but they want to make money. And if you don't figure out how to line those things up, you'll see people give you the okie dokie, winky winky, and then the next thing you know, they're doing what it takes to make money at the expense of the customer.
Yeah, that is it's fascinating to hear you talk about those constituencies. And I mean, even for myself, I know Devin to some degree in our day jobs, like it's part of it, right? Is there's that one side that says, okay, I think we all know what direction we need to lean in. And, to your point, it helps when it's the CEO that is pushing that. But the other side of that is, how do you mechanically make that work such that folks, back to incentive alignment and just how they think about success, and, what does getting a W mean to one person, and how do you shift the meaning of that just enough to where that is more appropriate aligned with somebody else's definition of also getting a W at the same time, and so it was cool to read some of the detail of that in the book, but also you kind of just walking through that. I'm curious. This is a both Devin and I mean, we geek out on all this stuff, all the way down to the kind of end user experience piece, of course. But for me, the enterprise side of it is always interesting. So, you describe in the book how after some research, and it sounded like they were working with Forrester and some other folks to kind of figure out, like, what's the best mechanism to actually create this pervasive sort of cultural change within the org. And you called out some of the options they had on the table, and ultimately they chose to go with really a small, like, customer experience team that was led by some heavy hitters, but size not gigantic, and remit was very specific on a couple of things, obviously trying to remain pretty agile in what they were doing. And you also called out, I think it was called the customer experience champions, that they would then pull in from across the org to also provide some context and actually to get their hands dirty a little bit in ongoing initiatives. So that's kind of a cool setup where it's like, okay, we're standing up this, very special ops team to do their thing, and we're going to pull some people in from across to get that with. I'm curious, for you, as you've done this with different orgs, How much does that vary org to org in terms of what the right solution is? Because we see all variations of it. It's highly political sometimes. Like what's the amount of variability on what actually works at a particular place?
Well, there's a huge amount of variability about what's tried, right?
Yep.
And it's fascinating because, there are times that in my career, I've championed chief experience officer. Like I want somebody in the C-suite who's responsible for this. But normally because I don't feel like there's a champion in the C-suite that is going to carry the day. So unless somebody's at the table in those conversations, this is going to be an afterthought and we're going to be begging for table scraps, right? So there have been times where I'm advocating the creation of a high-level senior executive. There are other times I come to an organization like Mercedes where, why do we need another Steve Cannon? Like we've already got the CEO who's going to make this be a part of every single conversation and it's going to filter all business decisions through the lens of the customer. So now, structurally, the more money we spend on a C-level officer is money that we're not going to be able to use to activate our initiatives throughout the organization. The more grassroots I can get in general in any organization, the better off I'm going to be. The less top-down, push-down concepts we're going to do, the more we're going to have great ideation. Leaders should say, this is our true north. That is our hill. Everything is going to be filtered through it. They're going to behave accordingly. They're going to support great ideas and initiatives that take you there. But they're not going to keep imposing on their people all this crap that people just say, hey, I love change. I just don't want to be changed, right? Like I am good with us going there, but don't keep telling me all day long how I can't do what I used to do in the name of this thing I would have otherwise supported, but now it's oppressive. So I think that's kind of where, I take these conversations. It varies based on how much support we have up top and how we can activate people throughout the organization. And I think the beauty of the Mercedes model and why I was so excited to share it was it is kind of antithetical to big corporate America, right?
Yeah.
You got this director who's got enterprise-wide authority supported by a CEO, and most of the work is being done through these grassroots champions who you're developing to be the soul. These are leaders without, not even titled leaders. These are de facto leaders who you're leveraging to drive the tentacles of the change movement throughout the organization. So yeah, I geek out about it too. And I've been in some situations where we had C-suite level customer experience officers who got nothing done. And we just spent an immense amount of money circling our wheels and creating more conflict.
No, that's super, super interesting. Yeah, we actually, previous conversation, Devin and I spent talking about CCO news recently and who's hiring them and who's getting rid of the position. And, again, that, whether it's that or it's the experience officer, et cetera, just all the different variations to your point. It's almost limitless in terms of the permutations that you can have on this stuff. But, funny enough, everyone's going for the same thing. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's a really last episode we spent a lot of time talking about that. How I love that you pointed that out. In this case, you've got the CEO. This can actually get driven through the organization. You've got the juice, right? Even if it's owned by a CMO, a chief customer officer, et cetera. There's not a guarantee there that you have enough juice to push this through the org, and that's one thing that I kind of put my flag down that the CEO, the buck stops with the CEO on customer experience. I think you have to have a CEO that's bought in, or it's just not going to happen. The level of infiltration that you have to do with this culture into the organization and the operational shifts, the incentive shifts, because there's real business stuff. I love you talking about how you guys worked on the incentive structure. There's so much that has to happen. It's hard for me to see how it is going to be successful, especially at the enterprise level, if you don't have the CEO 100% bought in.
I'm at a point in my career now where I don't take jobs unless the CEO talks to me. I know that sounds really arrogant. And God knows, for a lot of my career, that was not a criteria. Like if anybody talked to me and they had money, that was enough for me to work. But I think I've learned a lot about how much you can get done when you don't have the CEO involved. And I don't think you should ever say, we're not going to try without the CEO involved. But I'm at that point in my career where I just don't want to fight those battles and have to push so hard to get less. So I have the opportunity to make those choices. So I do. But I think if you're in an organization where you don't have the CEO's buy-in, you're constantly having to lead up, right? And you're having to try to say, but wait, we're as important as, whatever other department is really getting the lion's share of the interest and activity. The other challenge always is, on what authority can you require other departments to act in accord with this? It's all about influence, right? You're having to get people who were willing to say, okay, that doesn't cross over my incentive structure, so I will support you on it. Or I will dedicate some bandwidth to your effort, even though it's really not your effort, it's the organization's effort. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating governance and how do you get the right structure for your organization and a CX organization? It is not easy. And one size does not fit all organizations.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that is, I've been in the position, right, where you've got a fancy title in front of your name, but you don't actually have any real authority over the people you need to work with, but your mandate is still to try to get multiple parts of the business to work towards a common goal. And yeah, you have to have the juice of the CEO behind you. You've got to have that, because otherwise people are like, why do I need to change business as usual for you? Yeah. On whose authority are you trying to make all these changes in my corner of the business?
And worse yet, people don't actually say that, right? Like they pat you on the head and say, of course we care about our customer. Everything is about our customer. Are you kidding me? But then the behavior doesn't support it, right? And there's obstruction, and there's not dedication of their teams and resources to your initiatives. And they have a lot of other priorities that are competing, and they just blur in yours to the background. So, very seldom do you have someone say, "Oh, I don't really care about the customer. I care about sales."
That is, man, that hits on such a great point. From personally, I come from the technology side of this discussion, and then have kind of, I don't know if I've evolved, but at least my involvement has evolved over the years to extend into CX and how that flows through the org. But it is a particularly, I don't know if it's a unique challenge, but it's certainly unique from some of the more technical items where you'll get people that, frankly, in some cases, it's the opposite, right? They push back for the sake of pushing back because they can talk about this amorphous technical thing as being not interesting to them, and they don't want to, get on the path. But to your point with customer, everyone always says that it's important. And that was one of the things that I pulled out of, even just kind of reading through Driven to Delight, and at a little bit later in the book, you bring up something that, is certainly in my day-to-day and Devin's day-to-day around the alignment of, it was just for the sake of it, people, process, technology, right? So great tech, streamlined process, and passion people is the way that you put it, which I love. And the importance of getting those things to actually align, not on anything other than making life easier, respecting your customer, right? Are the things that you called out. Which reading that, it's like, yes, that is absolutely that's absolutely the goal. A lot of people probably think they're doing that. It can be, especially as you're crossing, different groups and those sorts of things. I know that can be a challenge sometimes. When you look at someone who kind of gives lip service to the customer piece, you look at the role that maybe tech can play, and you try to think about a roadmap or prioritization across the org, not for any one business unit or one group, but across the org. Have you found, in the more strategic conversations, like a lot of what you lay out with Mercedes-Benz USA, do you find that a more detailed roadmap is more valuable and allows more visibility, or is it one of those things where it's like, you know what, we just need to get rolling. We'll update this thing as we go, and prioritization will happen, monthly, quarterly, whatever, but we'll figure out a way to do it as we roll.
So I'll give you the Mercedes-Benz example, and I think it's a really good one. So just imagine you're in the war room of the customer experience strategy for Mercedes-Benz. What you're going to see is a bunch of sticky notes, right? And they're going to be, let's say, 2021, 2022, 2023, 5 years out. We're going to have, calendar markers at the top so that we know we're talking about all initiatives within that calendar year. We're going to have people, process, and technology as our lanes, our swim lanes across those years. And we're then going to put all these markers up. But what are we going to? What are our initiatives in 2022 that are going to build for 2023 to 2025? But they're all on sticky notes. They're all on sticky notes, and then we're going to put dots on them. Okay, and we're going to put dots on them. And I think in Mercedes with blue dots where parity plays. This is places where we have to catch up. Like, we are behind our industry. Customer experiences for our competitors are better and we need to get on board. Then we're going to put up red dots, which are going to be our differentiators. These are things that if we can execute, we will either force our competition to be fast followers, or they're not going to be able to claim it in any kind of meaningful way as theirs. It's going to be, look, they're copying the Mercedes thing. And so that's really what you're seeing, right? And now, how much do we emphasize the dots in the people versus the process versus technology really isn't the relative benefit that customers are going to get from any one of those interventions. And oh, by the way, we didn't execute something in 2022, so that takes some shuffling of some of those sticky notes in 2023 and beyond because there's contingencies. So I think, and obviously there are contingencies within each of those because we have to have a technology, we're going to have to train people on it. And, so, but I guess my point is it is fluid, but it is thoughtful. It is strategic. It is with filters. It is an understanding that each of those ingredients need to be in the formula. And I think it is prioritizing the things we have to do just to stay competitive versus the things we have to do to rise above the competitive experience.
Yeah. What I love about what you said, and I mean, as someone who's been in the consulting game for a long time, always anyone that's talking stickies and dots to me, like we're speaking the same language. So we're good there already. But the thing that's I think most struck me about how you were describing that process was not maybe even necessarily the sticky notes and the whiteboards and all the rest, but it's actually the idea that those stickies that are up there and the way that you're classifying kind of what is par for the course versus these differentiators, that you're doing it through the lens of the customer and thinking about that. Like that is the part that is so hard culturally to get to. So it is cool to hear, with the Mercedes example in particular, and I know for you, that's something that you do often, but that's the key, right? Is people looking at it through that lens versus some other market lens that may be relevant, but frankly is going to result in your true north or your barometer is off a little bit from that point forward, which is always going to come back to bite you.
And it is still aligned, on the top of that board is going to be the KPIs and the throughput, right? So it's going to be that we are going to be number one in the JD Power Customer Satisfaction Index, that we are going to, improve growth and sustain sales and whatever, right? It's to what end? And some of the things you look at and you go, yeah, it'll make a customer happy. It's not going to really get us where we need to be in our longer term vision of what we can be. So I think that there's always that, but you have to make sure that makes sense. Henry Ford said, really, in the end, we're all in the business to serve the customer. Businesses just kind of handle the money. Right. They bring it from the customer over to the employees and to the products. But it's the customer who's truly paying the bills. And so if we don't figure out how to deliver an experience that's going to generate money, then we're not going to have any job of just handling anything. Right. So, yeah, I love where you go with that. And God knows I should have bought stock in sticky notes as a young consultant.
I love that, man. I love that. One of the things that you called out in the book that I thought was just it really kind of blew me away when I listened to it. Listened to the impetus that they had, the idea that we're not just going to shoot for being the greatest in our industry. We want to shoot to have the best customer experience, period. Can you talk to us about how they got there? Because that is just such a mountain, right? It's such a peak. And to set it there, where did that come from?
Well, and I left out a name of a great consultant, speaker guy out there, Doug Lip. He was involved early on too, in helping them understand what Disney does, right? And how do you create a Disney experience? It came from this, I think. First off, we should probably expand this beyond what I'm about to say. So in their world, a lot of the buyers of these vehicles have a lot of discretionary income. And because they have a lot of discretionary income, they're spending their discretionary income in lots of places. And a lot of the experiences that they're spending that money on are pretty extraordinary. And then they go into a Mercedes-Benz dealer with a Keurig machine. And so nothing wrong with Keurig, but maybe you have a high-end espresso machine in your lounge instead of, using a Keurig pod. The point was that I think they understood that the comparative set for people who were buying their cars was not other car dealers. It was Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. It was the Four Seasons. It was Mandarin Oriental. It was the high-end luxury suite at a sporting event, right? It was something different than the kinds of concierge lounges that some dealers were providing. It certainly wasn't, getting your loaner car when you had an S-Class and then being put in a C-Class because the dealer hadn't had enough forethought to have sufficient number of S-Classes available when you brought your car in for service. So that's, I think, where they were, what they were thinking about. But what I would suggest to us is we're all competing against Amazon, and we're all competing against Costco, or the experience that we're having nowadays is one where if you don't meet the same convenience expectations, the same effective use of technology that most of your customers are getting in other settings that they're having, that's your competitive set.
I love that. That's one of the big principles that I operate off of. And I tell it to clients all the time. People expect for you to match the bar of the experiences they are having in other areas of their lives. So, when we start talking about competitive sets, it's one of the things that I'm quick to try to get us to think more in terms of what else is this person experiencing in their life? The people who engage in the behavior that makes them a customer of our brand, how does that indicate the other kinds of brands that they're engaging with? In the digital space, which is where a lot of my career has been, I would tell people that you're not being compared to other banks or other photo apps. You're not being compared to that. You're being compared to the baseline expectation of the other apps or the other digital experiences that people are having right now. So if somebody who is ubiquitous in this space has just raised the bar, guess where the bar is now? And anything less than that is going to wind up tanking your reviews. And it's, I love that principle was there for your work with Mercedes, because it's absolutely true. And people are often competing with things that they're not even thinking about. It's a big key to success, I think, in any customer experience endeavor. Really any innovation endeavor, period, is when you're innovating, you're looking for the bar that somebody says, this is better, I want to move to it. And that bar is not just set by folks that do the same thing as you.
And there's another key to this too, right? Because Costco should not try to be Ritz-Carlton, even though Ritz-Carlton provides one of the most opulent, nurturing, sensory-rich experiences on the planet. But the people at Costco should emulate the ability to anticipate the needs of their customer set just the same way as you do at the Ritz-Carlton. And I think this is where it gets tricky. If your customer's coming to you because you're more of a convenience, economical play, then really exceed the convenience and economical play of your industry and compare yourself against those brands that deliver the most convenient, economical experience out there. So I think it's very tricky not to try to be the Ritz-Carlton of garbage collection, right? Like that's probably not the right comparative set.
My garbage people don't even show up for like 2 weeks. Like I will pay for the Ritz-Carlton of garbage collection at this point in my life. Just to put that out there, if anyone's thinking about starting that business, like come on to Richmond, Virginia. I got you. You get one customer. That's me.
Being Italian and Sicilian, I think we've dominated the Italian collection the trash collection industry for a long time, and that's not based on customer centricity.
Oh man, that is amazing. One of the things that I've thought about just as I was reading the book, and I was amazed at the kinds of things that went into planning out what a Mercedes-Benz dealership experience would be like, right? I've only had one good experience at a dealer. That dealer was a little hole in the wall spot in my hometown in South Carolina. It was the first time I had dealt with a dealer where I didn't feel like they were trying to pull the wool over my eyes. They weren't pushy. But every experience that I've had at any other, sort of large dealership that I've tried, it's been kind of that typical experience that everybody kind of makes tropes about, right? And I was surprised at how closely those experiences kind of hewed to the trope. I'm curious, why do you think that is so common?
Well, first off, I am a Mercedes-Benz owner after writing the book. And I don't always get that experience today. And Steve's not there. And, I'm not sure if the culture sustains it as much. So I just want to make sure that I'm not the complaint department for any bad experiences people have had at Mercedes-Benz in the last couple of weeks. That said, I remember as a kid, my dad would show up in the Ford dealership to see the new models. And it was such an exciting thing to go into the dealership in a small town, and we knew them, and it was very loving. But the buying experience was always terrible. It was always that same, go to the other room and the manager is probably not going to accept the deal. And it was just wear you down, keep you in the deal for as long as we could, hide pricing, negotiate from a position of power. It was an old school model of sales, and there's still industries that still sell like that today, right? It still happens. But I think the technologies of the internet have really made it so transparency is expected in pricing almost everything, and you should be able to build your own and, all that. Right now, we're in a very weird bubble because obviously without enough computer chips to generate cars, the car dealers are once again in a pretty interesting power position, except for not being able to have enough used cars on their lots. So bottom line, I think it's just market forces change, right? And access to information and knowledge and buying patterns outside of the automobile industry. Kind of to your point earlier that, my experience, why do I have to sit in a car dealership to get a price? And, I can get a price for almost anything on Amazon today, right? I don't have to go and kick the tires and talk to somebody for 2 hours before that'll happen. And in the old days, even one of the big problems Mercedes had was that if you came in and you didn't look like you could buy, and then you went and bought a car over at BMW, and then they asked you in the JD Power survey, somebody who was, who had passed on the brand, what you thought of your experience at Mercedes, you just trashed them, right? Like we got pretty good ratings for how we treated you if you bought something. We didn't get such great ratings in the day if you had passed on the experience at a Mercedes. So just learning how to treat people, who come in ways that you don't think they're going to be buyers as buyers. Like I always think of everybody as a yet to buy person, right? And then some of them are still yet to buy even after you've interacted with them, but they're still, perspective for you in the future, and you don't want to burn them just because they didn't buy today.
I want to. I love the yet to buy piece. I had just on the whole, folks that walk in and trying to understand, who a buyer is. I lived in London for a couple of years and had a neighbor. I won't say which brand of vehicle he was the GM at, but it was one that very few people can afford. And I remember us kind of having a quick conversation one day, and he told me, he's like, "Listen, man, here's the deal." And this is right in the middle of London. He's like, if somebody walks in a 3-piece suit, they are not buying a fill in the blank. He's like, when somebody rolls in with sweatpants, like, that's my buyer.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is a guy, literally one of the most prestigious brands in the world in the middle of London. And he had it down. He's like, listen, I know exactly, I know who is actually going to write a check that day versus the person who's like, all right, I'll be back for the next 4 years. Telling you that it's coming soon, So even
you guys are too young to remember the movie Pretty Woman, but the whole notion of going on Rodeo Drive, and unless you looked the part, you weren't necessarily going to get a lot of attention. One of my favorite things, I have a colleague of mine who consulted for Porsche, and one of their big discriminating questions is simply this: have you ever owned a Porsche before? And depending upon that answer, if you're a guy my age, the entire selling experience and everything that I'm going to try to share with you changes in terms of your journey. So if I say no, then it's all about, well, you're going to find revitalization and youth when you sit inside of this. And the way people are going to see you from outside of the car is going to be XYZ, right? If I've owned them before, it's all about just gearhead stuff, like the innovations and the things you're going to have, the ferocity of the vehicle that you're going to experience in the new iteration. It's, I think, important for us to read our customers. Danny Meyer, once said that everybody has an invisible sign around their neck, and our job is to understand that sign so we can tailor the experience in accord with the need of that person who's in front of you any given day.
That is incredible. I think that I'm a big proponent of understanding what somebody is trying to accomplish, the progress that they're trying to make. When you're trying to serve the customer, you've got to understand the core of that in order to really deliver, the ultimate experience that they want, because it's got to solve their problem. Knowing how to talk to somebody is so important. Knowing what to bring up that's going to be important to that person. I think that's actually a pretty cool thing to do, to know, hey, look, if this person hasn't bought before, these are the things that are going to be important to them. They're moving from A to B, or maybe this is an A to G move for them, and you're going to talk about what their life is going to be like after this. For somebody, this might be a G to H move, and you need to tell them the gap here. You need to tell them what the delta is here and why that's a worthy move. So I think that's very, very cool, because there's a level of understanding of your customer that you have to do that well. Joseph, I think that, obviously you just have such a stack of books and that you've written. You've worked with so many different companies, and I love just the breadth of your experience and your knowledge of what this stuff looks like done successfully at scale across a bunch of industries. I kind of wanted to ask you a broader question. Just, what kind of trends are you seeing, with technology coming into play in the customer experience? What kind of trends are you seeing of how that's changing where the bar is for customers over the years, over the last couple of years? What are you seeing?
Well, I think what I'm seeing is very similar to what I think Congress in the 60s was talking about, all the free time we were going to have in 2000s because we had technology. Like, life was going to be so easy, we're hardly going to have anything to do. I think customers really want a lot of tech, but they're not very satisfied by what they're getting. I mean, if you look at, we got Zoom, we got all these technologies, we're able to connect, we're able to do cashless, we don't have to stand in line, I can schedule appointments with digital technology. Oh my gosh, so many wonderful things. And yet our customer engagement scores this year are just down into the toilet, right? I mean, there's really been a trend, an NPS dropping. And I think what we're seeing is we haven't figured out how to balance this stuff very well. And we're also having such breakdowns in supply chain and human staffing availability that the technology can't carry all the weight. It's doing a remarkable amount for us. And any brand who was not digitally savvy, wasn't on a digital transformation path, suddenly, came to Jesus. And those who were suddenly figured that they could go on hyperspeed when they had planned to do things over 4 or 5 year timelines. So I think the technology is the least of our problems, figuring out how to balance it and getting the right people to support it, making sure that we have hybrid journeys considered where people have the option to opt into technology most of the time for self-service, but when they do opt human, that we have real humans who are capable of leveraging a warmth and a humanity that no computer software technology has ever really emulated. I think that's where I see the trends going, is that technology-aided human-powered experience that's needed to engage customers emotionally as well as expedite transactions for them.
Absolutely. That is one of the things that I always say is that technology is there to augment human capability. It's not there to replace humans. It's there to augment. We're able to do things that we used to have to focus on, more repetitive or potentially mundane things. Technology should allow us to deliver even better experiences because there's more time for that human touch, the things that machines can't do. So I love that, because I'm also a proponent of the idea that you can have a really smooth digital experience, and I'm huge on that, right? I come from a UX software design world. I'm really big on that, but I also realize that it's everything around that also has to be right. And I think that's one of the things I feel like we right now in this age we're kind of coming up short on, is you've got a lot of companies that index super high on technology, and as soon as you need to talk to a person, the experience just goes off a cliff.
I mean, listen, that's happening. We're seeing it, everyone, not just us. We don't have a special view into this, but think about, the Great Resignation. Think about employees, right, as stakeholders as well. It's the same paradigm, right? Of you have folks that it's like, yeah, I have the tech. I to Joseph's point, I have Zoom. I've got a decent setup, like at my house or whatever that might be, and there's some advantages there. But there was not. I'm now, as an employee, I might now be realizing like, wow, there was really nothing under the hood there, though. I don't have those connection points, or I don't feel as strongly as I probably would have said I felt stronger about this thing before, when it was all kind of status quo. But the second you upset that piece of it, it's also forcing me to realize that, I actually don't care as much about that thing. Or, more positively, I might care a little more about something else, but that's going to cause me to move in a certain direction.
Yeah, or my human connections were severed, and
exactly.
There was no soul that I had as a connection to purpose, and so I'm looking for a more soul purpose, and maybe I'll forge some human connections along the way. I think you're spot on with all of that. And Devin, I just want to point out that I think the best customer experience consultants are those who come from UX because they have Scrum, they have Agile, they understand that we don't have to overthink everything. We just have to iterate closer and closer to customer wants, needs, and desires. And I've worked with some incredible consultants who come from your background, and all the power to you guys. I'm of that generation that will soon be, hopefully playing more golf or doing something. And I'm so excited about the future of CX and where people like yourself are going to take us. And I stood on the shoulders of giants in a day when we didn't talk about customer experience. We talked about customer service. We didn't understand all these other enveloping factors that were needed. And now to watch what you guys are doing to kind of work on these balance points between technology and humanity, it's a great road ahead.
Man, that means a lot coming from a guy of your caliber, and I'm excited about what technology is allowing us to do, and my hope is that as we continue on that path, that our collective sort of employee and customer experience, continues to get closer to allowing people to do those things that they're passionate about, that gives them a sense of purpose. Because that's, on the other side, that's what drives that customer experience, is people being able to pour their heart and their soul into a product, into a service that allows somebody on the other side to feel that warmth, even if it's through technology. That's what I always tried to do. When I was full-time doing software design, I wanted people to feel the human touch, even though they were using an app on their computer or on their phone. Man, it's very encouraging to hear you say that.
Well, it's well deserved. I'm gonna have you on my my live stream sometime, so we can expose my audience to you guys as well. So I'm honored that you took the time with me today. As we talk about, I really think Mercedes is an example of one of those cases where they were committed for the long haul. A lot of the work I've done, and I'm sure you'll do, is going to be short. It's in for a project, it's in for an initiative, it's to kind of change some specific dimension. This really, the example for Mercedes for me is a transformational journey into not letting their high quality product down with an experience that was inferior to the design of the product.
Absolutely, man. Just such a master, man. Such a master. Joseph, it has been amazing to have you back on the show. I would love to come on your show anytime. You name the time, and I'm there. Love the work that you do, and my hope is that we can have you back. As I make it through your stack of books, I'm going to have more questions, but would love to continue to do this stuff with you. So
well, at this rate, I'm going to have to keep writing. Give me a break. Slow down a little bit.
Well, it's your fault because they're good books.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, David, for having me as well.
Joseph, thanks for joining us, man.